Mary J. Watson is making a special appearance on the Jay Jonah Jameson podcast to promote her latest book. However, Jameson immediately voices his dissatisfaction, suggesting that she should add some flair to her work due to underwhelming sales. MJ, who has been traveling with Peter and receiving his help with photography, focuses on writing that reflects reality and strives to convey the truth. In contrast, listeners of Jay Jameson's Just the Facts with Jay Jonah Jameson are familiar with his inclination to dictate opinions, often struggling to offer constructive criticism in a manner that is well received. This dynamic leads to tension during the podcast. MJ is also facing her own challenges, which will be discussed later. However, in the midst of a heated conversation, Peter and Miles suddenly burst through the window, engaged in a battle with the tarantula. Initially, it appears to be a typical trope, with both Spider-Men coincidentally crashing into the podcast. However, the narrative addresses this coincidence throughout the story. As the three of them crash through the window, Jameson promptly seeks cover, while reminding his team of their contractual duty to act as human shields in the event of any danger to his life, a surprising clause to include in a contract. Meanwhile, MJ swiftly begins live streaming the entire event for the Daily Bugle. While Peter and Miles confront the tarantula, Peter taunts him, saying, "What, being defeated by two Spider-Men wasn't sufficient? You wanted an encore." The tarantula retorts that he is striving to regain his honor. However, with the tarantula now targeting Peter and Miles, he's essentially seeking revenge for a previous encounter that Miles was not involved in. Despite this, Miles, having been Spider-Man for a considerable time, understands the concept that great power also entails the responsibility for others, or at least that's what Uncle Ben said. During their conversation, the fight with the tarantula reaches an underwhelming conclusion when the tarantula attempts to open fire. Yet, due to a combination of technical issues and his weapon getting ensnared in webs simultaneously, his attack backfires. Consequently, both the fight and the podcast interview come to an abrupt end. Subsequently, Peter acknowledges that he purposely directed the fight toward the interview to help MJ escape the situation. Later, during a conversation with MJ, she confesses her disappointment over her book's poor performance and expresses a desire for better sales. Similarly, Peter reveals the challenges he's facing in keeping up with the mortgage after Aunt May's passing, as he's aware that she had taken out a loan during the 2018 Spider-Man game's Devil's Breath crisis to sustain the Feast Center. For Peter, knowing that Aunt May had taken out a loan, the exact amount of which he was unaware of at the time, maintaining their place in Forest Hills was crucial as it held sentimental value as the last connection to Uncle Ben. Upon hearing this, MJ suggested the idea of getting a housemate, to which Peter subtly hinted at her moving in. However, MJ declined, citing her need to stay close to the city for work, and reassured Peter that her decision had nothing to do with their relationship, creating a slightly awkward situation. Luckily, Miles arrived, burdened with the task of selecting a college, particularly one with a strong music program and mathematics department. Peter and MJ offered advice, with Peter emphasizing the importance of making a decision that aligns with one's heart, considering its long-term impact on studies and student loans. On the other hand, MJ suggested the possibility of changing majors if the initial choice didn't feel right. To shift the conversation, Miles proposed discussing spider-related topics, mentioning his modifications to Peter's lures, similar to the ones he had given MJ during her time as Spider-Man, recalling the awkwardness of that experience. They all agreed to accompany Miles to the computer store for parts rather than staying and enduring the awkwardness. Following their visit to the computer store, they made a stop at Luck's car repair, where something triggered Peter's spider sense. Subsequently, MJ realized that the alarm had been disabled and someone had broken in. Peter and Miles got up to investigate, finding a group of individuals in red hoods who didn't seem to be proficient car thieves. Despite their dubious intentions, Peter and Miles intervened, confronting the group. They quickly began making ominous magical threats, claiming to work for someone known as the Hood, who allegedly wielded the forces of darkness. Peter initially considered them to be LARPers, possibly part of a live-action role-playing group gone astray. However, Peter's perspective shifted when he kicked one of the hooded figures, causing the person to momentarily disappear, leading him to question whether these individuals possessed actual magical abilities. MJ intervened by dousing one of the men with a bucket of a certain chemical, causing the man to claim it was toxic. This enabled Peter to locate the man, while Miles restrained the others with his webs. With the Hood's men remaining invisible, Peter and Miles couldn't detect them using their spider senses until they launched an attack. Nonetheless, they managed to subdue the rest of the group, with Peter utilizing his electric webbing during the scuffle. He reflected on the usefulness of such skills, hoping they would be available from the start of the game, considering how sequels often reset progress as if the character had forgotten their past experiences. Soon afterward, Peter realized that he and Miles had triggered an alarm that would likely bring the police to the scene imminently. He suggested that they meet the authorities in their regular attire rather than as Spider-Men to avoid unnecessary complications. During the police presence, MJ informs Officer Lopez of her affiliation with the Daily Bugle and inquiries about any available information on the culprits. Lopez mentions recent matching reports and the discussion between the officers around the mysteriously vanished perpetrators, leading one of them to suggest the involvement of magic. However, both Peter and Miles remain skeptical of the notion of magic at play, recalling their experiences with phenomena such as Mr. Negative shadow demons and a man with sand transforming abilities. MJ interjects, having investigated the previously mentioned reports and discovered the ongoing activities of the same hooded group targeting high-value items like cars, cash, and electronics. She shares the known locations with the officers, hoping for a breakthrough in the case. Peter acknowledges the peculiarity of the situation, questioning the motive behind a group with potential advanced technology or mystical capabilities restricting themselves to thefts and break-ins. As they set out towards the identified areas, Miles receives a notification on his friendly neighborhood Spider-Man app regarding suspicious activities at a nearby jewelry store. With MJ on her way, the trio prepares to confront the situation. Upon entering the store, Peter deploys his web blossom technique to apprehend several members of the Hood's crew, confirming their suspicion that the criminals' abilities were not as supernatural as they initially appeared. The Hood's associates are uncooperative, but when MJ arrives, she accesses the unmasked photos of the individuals that Peter had sent her. Armed with their identities, she threatens to expose them, a potentially fatal consequence given their dubious pasts. One of the individuals divulges that they are unaware of the Hood's true identity, having been cautious not to inquire. They explain that the Hood guided them to the Tinkerer's CAC, from which they acquired the technology. Believing in the Hood's magical abilities, the informant recounts instances where the Hood turned invisible and even appeared to walk on air. Miles recalls that Finn's technology, particularly the programmable matter boots she devised for her associates, enabled them to perform similar feats of agility. He suggests that the Hood might have tinkered with the boots to enhance their capabilities. As they continue to interrogate the group, one of the individuals reveals that the Hood requires funds to smuggle mystical artifacts from abroad, possessing potent life and death capabilities. The revelation leaves them astonished at the fantastical nature of the Hood's endeavors. However, before they can extract further information, the lights abruptly go out, and a tumult ensues as gunfire erupts, prompting one of the captives to warn that the Hood has arrived to deliver a lethal blow. MJ attempts to activate the sprinklers by hitting the fire alarm, but the barrage of shots prevents her from doing so. Peter also tries but is struck and misses. Meanwhile, when Miles goes for the 360 web blast, the Hood criticizes his telegraphing of the move. During the chaos, the Hood manages to escape with the most valuable jewelry from the store, leaving the team with no leads and little to go on. The officers agree with the Spider-Man's assessment, and moments later, Parker emerges with his hands raised, allowing the police to apprehend him. Feeling like he has nothing left to fight for now that his mother is gone, Parker submits to the authorities. The following day, Peter and MJ resolve their issues, with Peter admitting his concern for MJ's safety all this time. MJ, on the other hand, has been troubled by the lackluster performance of her book. Meanwhile, Miles has decided to attend ESU and asks Peter for a recommendation. The issue concludes with a cinematic feeling, reminiscent of an ending you might see in a Bet movie. Later, we find MJ returning to the Daily Bugle, where it is revealed that Jay Jonah Jameson is buying back the company and planning to take charge once again. When asked about his motivation, Jameson expresses his desire to impart his wisdom and journalism practices to the younger generation. While this development is intriguing, it prompts speculation about whether it could lead to Eddie Brock's return to the Bugle. Only time will tell in Spider-Man 2.